Welcome to the Glory Behind the Story by OnThree, where we bring you captivating conversations with remarkable individuals who have left an incredible mark in the world of sports and beyond. In our very first episode, we have the honor of sitting down with the renowned Bob Alejo, a true legend in the field of strength and conditioning. Welcome to the OnThree podcast. Let's dive in and explore the mindset of champions with our remarkable guest, Bob Alejo. Bob, how are you? Great to see you again since NSCA.
Well, it's great to see you too, Clay. I'm happy to see you and chat with you. It's going to be like just we're hanging out at the table, passing the butter, to get the bread going before we get the big steaks. So I'm looking forward to it.
Exactly. Well, at OnThree we focus on only passions, perseverances, and pursuits of excellence. And I thought I'd kick it off by asking you, can you reflect on your passion?
On my passions, you said?
Yeah.
Well, I think the root of what I do, the passion is just to help, to help athletes and people in general. I think, I've been in athletic high performance for, more than 41 years now. But I think more than anything, it boils down to human performance because I don't, even though I'm in the genre of elite level athletics, that doesn't stop me from helping people who ask me questions about how do I do this and that aren't athletes. And, it comes down to human performance. It's just that, when I'm working with athletes, it's human performance at a higher level. So I think that the biggest part of my passion has to be just, I want to help. I think that what I can do can help. And I'm convinced of it. And so far, if I looked back at my track record and erased the name off it, I'd look at it and say, wow, that guy's done a pretty good job. So I'm happy with that. I'm proud of it.
And over all the years, on the possible ways to help, what are a couple of the top ways that you find most helpful to help?
Well, oftentimes I think people get caught up in my profession talking about the science and the biomechanics and all that. And, frankly, the people that we work with aren't likely to understand all that stuff. So I feel like there's a better chance of me speaking in their language than me speaking in a more familiar academic language, right? So I try to, I've kind of got it down into just two things, right? Run faster, jump higher. Oddly, the physiology that's linked to running faster and jumping higher is really vast. I mean, it really tells you a lot of things when you see somebody that runs fast and jumps high. And you can come to some pretty good conclusions with just that information. So I think part of that is making sure I, boil it down in those terms. Also, I think one of the things that I've taught coaches before, and I know it's been an asset to me, is speaking the sport. I think you find you get it a lot easier when you speak the vernacular that is cultural and indigenous to the sport, right? So running fast and jumping high is a good idea. How does that help me, put the ball in the back of the net or the puck in the back of the net, or how does it help me to dunk or cover a receiver, run for more yards or hit a homer or steal a base, or, that's where I think I've done a pretty good job of leaving all the academic stuff behind me and bringing forward, here's what this does for you as an athlete in your sport.
And I'm curious, what would you say people would say about you in some of your most recent positions?
Wow. I think I would answer that by saying, I'm organized. I got some guidelines and things I want the folks who work with me and the folks I have oversight of to do. I want to have some guidelines and expectations. I think that's part of it. I'd like to think that the body of work that I have is something that people can rely on. I mean, I think I've got a pretty good subject size. My N number is pretty high. So, you know, even if you said, well, you've been lucky for 20 years, I'd have to say, well, what about the other 20? I mean, so that's worked out for me. So I would probably say that. I would hope that's what they say. So far, so good, I think, right? I mean, one of the things I think I've allowed folks to do is to have some creative license there. I mean, all the things I've done as a director and as an associate athletic director is say that you don't have to do all the same methods, but we're going to have one philosophy, and at the end we want the same results. So until that becomes incongruent with our idea, then we're going to stick with that. In other words, if I like to bench press and somebody else likes to do dumbbells instead of a bar, okay, I mean, so we've got the kind of chest thing taken care of. Well, let's see what that ends up being in terms of injury mitigation and perhaps performance if we can measure it. So that's why I say we can have different methods, but we can only have one philosophy.
And thinking on your history, can you think of a team that you were on that really embodied that one philosophy mentality versus one that maybe didn't do it quite as well?
Not really, because I think the staff that was involved with us, not just in strength and conditioning, but coaching staff and sports medicine staff and the medical side, we're all on the same page. So there's really nothing to combat or get in the way of our goal. I mean, I saw that with the Oakland A's, and all I can tell you what we did with the A's, and in the end, they made a movie out of it. So the Moneyball movie was in part because we all on that team and in that staff and in that clubhouse all thought the same way. I mean, we were going to do whatever we thought it was necessary to win games and to become great. And whatever that was, it may change day to day, it may change month to month, but we all realized what that was for all of us. So I think the embodiment there wasn't so much the strength and conditioning program. I mean, look, as much as I think I'm valuable and a pretty damn good coach, it's really hard to link what I do, or anybody for that matter, and I really don't give a crap who it is, to say, oh, look what I've done. We won the Super Bowl, or look what I won. We were world champions. I'd say you have very little credibility there. What I would say is I know what I did and I know what happened. The rest is up to you. So and under those terms, there's just so many variables to having a winning team. I think that strength and conditioning is a vital part. I think it's important. But we're no more or less a part of a pretty big wheel with spokes on it. And proud of the profession, proud of my career. But at the same time, I think part of the buy-in that I got was because the athletes bought in all different areas, right? They bought into sports medicine, they bought into the sports coach, they bought into the hitting coach, and if I go back over the teams, and I've been associated with 23 national collegiate championships and a gold medal in the Olympics, and a couple of playoff years with the A's, and every one of those teams were just like that. I mean, there was no real debate about what we were going to do in any area. And subsequently, that formula worked pretty well, in the end. Not to say that some teams maybe weren't as fragmented, but for sure the teams that won all the time were teams that were right on target, right? They really knew what they wanted to do. And look, sometimes you got the best strength program, you got the best trainers, and you don't win, and that's something that folks will look at. So again, as I say, there's so many variables, but I would say that I got a lot of compliance with what I brought because that team was in compliance with every thought that we had on that team. So it was just one more thing they needed to do in our strength and conditioning program.
And with all those variables out there that sort of play into success, what do you think are some of the most important variables that can be controlled, from a coach or an athlete's perspective to tip the scales?
Team first is a big thing. I think that's the overriding principle of all of it, that, you want to be a champion. And that a champion doesn't come from 1, 2, 5, 8, 10 players. It comes from the entire team. And it really is a bottom up proposition. And when your last player on the bench is better than their last player on the bench, I think you got a real shot. And because I think that part of the team really speaks to the character and expectations of the entire team. So I know for sure that's what we've seen. And on the teams that I've been associated with that were champions, there was no division amongst that team. In other words, the starters and the stars, they were over here and did something, and the second string did this, and the guys at the very bottom that weren't playing, they were over here. It was never like that. So once you get shaped in the mind about how you want to be, then the body's going to follow anyway. And so now you're talking about your work ethic and everything else that goes along with it. Here's what you do. And then it comes to here's what you do, because this is what we do. This is the Oakland A's way, right? This is the UCLA way, that sort of thing. It's not, this is my way or their way or something like that. That's what we do. I think that's the overriding principle.
And what are some of those examples that you personally, try to do for others to emulate, be it a coach or a player?
Well, we're just supporting each other, right? So, and of course, as a staff member, as a support staff member, I'm only as strong as the top dog, right? So, if I'm not getting the support up there, then it's likely my chances of having everybody on the same page in my room, in the athletic training room, or in the physical therapy room, or the nutrition room, that's gonna be eaten away. And I've seen teams like that, and they've had talent, but as each one collectively, it didn't make a difference. They were really good individually, but they were an awful team. So that I've seen that happen before. So I think my biggest thing is just to support and continue to propagate the culture and character and expectation of what we want in our team.
Switching gears for a minute here, give me a moment of perseverance. And I'm curious what those circumstances were and what you were thinking at that lowest point and how you dealt with it.
Well, I wouldn't call it a lowest point. I would call it not the highest point. Try to spin this a little bit. Well, again, I think the Oakland A's are a perfect example. We almost lost 100 games twice, which is the epitome of you stink, right? You're a month out of the season ending and you have no chance at all for the playoffs. And so the perseverance there was really important. And I oftentimes, I'm glad you asked me that question, because oftentimes I point to that team. And that team had tremendous work ethic, and they were close. They had good work ethic and good character, and they knew, that team knew who they were, and they knew who they weren't. And so we go into town, and we tried to win every single game we played. We played hard, and at the end, we didn't win very many games, and that's just the way it was. And as Billy Beane started to shape that roster, we added 10 more wins the next year, and then a couple of more wins the next year. And next thing you know, we're division champions. So, we used to say out there that, we were having fun. For me, it was a great time because I'm able to characterize that time, Clay, as couldn't wait to get there in the morning and hated to go home at night. It was so much fun. We got so much fun, and we worked hard every day, and we were never discouraged, never. In fact, even though when you look back, you say, wow, all the extra batting practice and all the things we did really didn't make much difference because we weren't very good. So we had to make some roster changes and things like that. But guys still went in there and kept working and kept working and kept working. And sooner or later, we overcame. In the beginning, while we were losing those 100 games or 80 games or, whatever, we used to go down the side, while we were warming up before a game, and we were having so much fun. We used to say, man, when we get good, it's going to be hard to beat us because of who we are, And I always kind of bristle a little bit when you hear teams that win championships say, oh, we're so close, we're like a family. Well, no kidding, you're winning all the time, so everything's great, right? There's no trick to that. In fact, that's no skill at all, right? In our case, we were close as a team, and we were awful. And thing was, we were tied already. And so I like I said, I kind of bristle at that fact. If your team's really good, then they're going to be just like that when they're not very good and be tight. Well, I saw that. I experienced that. Then when it came time with that small payroll, as we went to face the Yankees and the other teams, we beat them. We beat them bad. We weren't able to progress far in the playoffs. It's kind of the A's history a little bit, but that's a great question to ask because I saw it unfold from the first day. I mean, from the first day on until, 2001 when I left, it was perseverance. It was character. It was a never-ending quest to excellence, man. It was really something to be involved with.
Yeah, and I'm curious regarding baseball. They're on the road, up to maybe 200 games, a year, and it's known for them having workouts after games. Talk to me about what that was like as a strength coach. Having to find that balance between strength and preparation, knowing that you're going to be playing the next afternoon. How, given the other jobs that you have, was that tricky?
Yeah, that's another great question because coming out of college, I never had to do that. I didn't have that skill. That wasn't in my arsenal because we didn't have to do it. But I quickly learned. Thank goodness I had good teachers in college, and I'd seen some good things when I was going to school and understood the science behind recovery and strength and all that. And so I kind of put that out there and designed my own system. But, in the beginning, yeah, you're thinking these guys are playing and training on the same day. They're either training before the game or they're training after the game. I chose after because I really wanted to work on the strength aspect of baseball, which very few teams were doing then. And if I was to look at it right now, probably very few teams are doing it now. They just don't quite understand how to do it. But I first kind of looked at and saw what everybody was doing, asked their opinions a little bit because these guys were big leaguers. I came onto a team that had 2 Hall of Famers on it, and there were some what we used to call then the highest level, the highest accolade would be called a pro. We had plenty of pros on that team, and they would tell me what they like to do, and I'd share my thoughts with them. And sooner or later, over time, our workout sessions were afterwards because I wanted them to go heavy and give me all they got. And I felt like if I asked them to do that before a game, depending on who was pitching or, what kind of night they had the night before, they may not give me their best. So I said, well, I need your best. And they said, well, I'm tired. It doesn't bother me. Give me your best when you're tired then. Then I know how to adjust that, right? And so that was something new. And now, that was helpful going back into college again because now what you can withstand and recover from. So there was, kind of influenced some of the other workouts that I was involved with. I'll tell you another thing that influenced me was when we went on strike, we had replacement players. And Tony La Russa, who's, all about winning, he said, you know what, I think what's going to happen here is, we're going to go ahead and play. And we did play. I think we played a couple of games. I can't remember how many now, so long ago. But he said, I think what's going to happen is we're going to play. When the strike's over, whatever your record is, you're going to carry that forward. He said, so I want to win the damn thing. I want to win as many games as we can so we get ahead of everybody. So he challenged everyone. You got something that you can do to make it better than it is right now. And that's when I came up with what they call microdosing now. But, we were doing conditioning twice a day, but at a medium pace where we can come back and come again. So, I learned something there, in a little bit of, with a little bit of adversity that was upon us at the time. And that was another thing that I learned from baseball because of the way the games are played and all that. So it was something. It's kind of evolved. You get presented a situation, you say you can do it, and then you go do it. And good. Luckily for me, it worked out fine.
And I'm curious, Bob, just from a personal standpoint, outside of coaching, what's been a challenging moment, that was pivotal for you personally? It might have been as an athlete yourself or elsewhere, but I'm curious on that side of things too, and how that plays into the professional life.
Oh, well, let's see. I've pretty much dictated my entire career, all 40-something years. But, most recently, we have a new athletic director who decided that, there was 2 or 3 folks that he wanted to bring in and 2 or 3 folks he wanted to let go, and I was one of them. So, on November 15th, that was the first time that somebody decided, my fate rather than myself. So I wouldn't say there's any kind of pivot right there, but it certainly changes your outlook, and it was a struggle, and I'm still kind of looking around and wondering what I want to do. At the same time, I think what it did was it widened my thought process. I wouldn't say it was dark, but this is funny. There's a rapper by the name of Fat Joe who's out of New York, and I was watching the Behind the Music the other day, and he said, it's in the darkest times that you get clarity. And I didn't, and certainly there's a lot of things that are darker than losing your job, although it's pretty damn uncomfortable. At the same time, I didn't get clarity. I mean, it's immediate, what you end up seeing and what becomes important and not important. And I don't know that I'll ever go back to thinking any differently than what happened there, right? And so I'm here right now seeing things that were important that were important and that I didn't think were important before, and things that I thought important before just aren't anymore to me in the profession and in certain instances, right? So I'm thankful that all of a sudden I got blindsided with being not retained. And so that ends up being a benefit to me and not a curse. It's kind of like my age. My age is beneficial to me. It ain't a curse. So, think about that. You have to be at least 41 years old to have a 41-year career, and it's likely it's probably not going to start when you're born. So I'm still banging away, but that's a great point. Professionally, I've seen to have vaulted back and forth, although a couple of times I did take a step back on my own, my choice, and the next step was farther ahead than the last step. So it was kind of a up, back one step, forward two. And so that's, I've bet on myself when it comes to the business. And so far, I got a pretty good stack of chips in front of me.
And that takes a lot of presence of mind to be able to step back from something, and realize that 2 steps back, maybe 5 steps forward.
Yeah.
Where'd you learn that from?
I don't know. I mean, I look, people ask me all the time about certain things. Sometimes I forget where I've been, what I've done. And at that point, I just say, look, man, I'm a kid from middle America that just has happened to live this sort of Walter Mitty existence. I mean, it just happened. I'm a California State University graduate, and I'm out of the Bay Area. And next thing you know, I got a uniform on. I'm on the field in the Oakland Coliseum as their strength coach. Or I'm at UCLA after watching these teams play on TV just months before I got that job at UCLA and was there for 10 years. I never took for granted those positions. At the same time, I was doing, I look back, it was just natural for me to do it. And still at the same time, you kind of, you vibrate, you vibrate what's drawn to you. And so, I think every time I've taken a step and kept moving, I think it was just a reflection of the work I'd done and the people I'd met and the people who helped me. So, I mean, nobody does this by themselves. And I mean to tell you that I'm an absolute patchwork, like a quilt of so many minds and so many methods and so many friendships, professionally and personally, that it'd be impossible for me to glean any one person and say, oh, I do, it's often in our business, well, I do the Smith method, or I do, I think it's kind of bullshit, honestly. I picked and chose out of that. It's my method now. But my method comes from so many other fragments from other people, right? So at the same time, it is about just doing the work. So I don't think of it as anything other than doing the work. So you just think, you make your adjustments and you say, what's next? Here we go.
Looking back on your career, are there are there a couple standout mentors that you had who you're like, I want to grab this piece of what they've done and really sort of put it in my toolbox? And who were those individuals and what did they do?
Well, there were some sport coaches that did that. Ziggy Schmidt in soccer, who was a national legend there, one of the greatest soccer coaches in U.S. history. Ron Ballatori Sticks was the men's swimming coach who I learned a lot from in terms of coaching, not just swimming, but just coaching and character. Terry Donahue was big for me, who's still the leading, has the most wins in Pac-10 history. I don't know about Pac-12 now, but, was a tremendous guy who took me under his wing immediately, and of course, I can't dismiss the fact that when I was in Oakland, Tony La Russa, he was a Hall of Fame manager, and all his staff, people talk to you about or mention, I just want to be left alone. Let me do my job. Wow, what a great job I had. They let me do my job. The A's not only let me do my job, but they helped me do my job. It's a big difference. And that's why if I have any credibility in baseball, and I do, it's from them. It's, again, I felt like, if you ever see those movies where people are in the jungle and there's somebody out front, with a machete hacking the vines so they can get through. That's what the A's did for me. That's the way I view it. And, I didn't, I was really rough for you stumbling. And I said, no, I didn't stumble at all. And they kind of looked at me like, wow, that's kind of pompous. I said, there was nothing to stumble over. It was removed out of my way before I got there. So, it was really, what a great experience that was, for me. So, that whole staff was something else. The friendships that came out of all that are still lasting, certainly. I would say my college coach, Don Miller, too, since passed, was big influence. But in the profession, I would say really the two that stand out to me are Bob Ward of the Dallas Cowboys, who was with Tom Landry all those years, and of course Al Vermeil, who's an icon as well. Both of them I was close with, am close with. And, they were really gracious with their information and their time. Um, those two really stick out at me, but the other 1,000, I can't even name.
40 years now into your coaching experience, how do you still pursue excellence?
I can only say, Clay, that I just do the job. I don't know how to, when somebody says, you got better bring your A game. And I said, I don't have any other game. I don't know what other game I could bring. I'm going to go as hard as I can. I'm going to give you my all out effort. That way we can both say, wow, you really sucked, or wow, you're really good, because it'll be clear that it's a full on effort and you got what I got, right? Fortunately, I've done pretty good with that. One of the things I found, and I've heard a guy, and you may have heard this name too, Ed Milet. Ed Milet is a kind of a motivational speaker who's got a pretty good story. Anyway, of the things he speaks about being a perfectionist, right? And what he said, you know what that is? That's an excuse. And I kind of listened to him a little bit, being a perfectionist, like, well, I got, if I'm a perfectionist, I got to fix that. Well, you'll never get to perfection. So essentially you're giving yourself a parachute, just, you want to just go as hard as you can and don't be a perfectionist, because you're never going to get there. And what that calling yourself a perfectionist allows you not to ever arrive. So my whole thing is, is just do your best job. Make sure you're prepared, and that best job comes with preparation, right? If you're prepared and you have tremendous work ethic, then you can evaluate what you've done. That none of that, as you well know, that doesn't even guarantee success. But at least you know how you did it, and doing less than that will guarantee you not to be successful. Right. So you only have one choice, and that's to do the best job possible, be prepared, and work hard. And I think I embody that. I think people would say that, if anything, whether they like me or not, it's another story. Their opinion is none of my business, frankly. So what I would say is, if they were to say, how's the training programs, who knows? But, I know the guy works hard and he's prepared. I think that would be a great compliment.
Do you have any other guidance that you'd give younger coaches, aside from preparation, that could increase their probabilities of success?
Get a good network. And by network, I don't mean just, a group of friends and people that can, a group of friends that can help you and be honest with you, and, that will make you better. You want to surround yourself with excellence. That's what you want. Surround yourself, insulate yourself, be around people who are at a higher level. And when they say, hey, you're only as good as the people, I believe that. I totally believe that. And if you're climbing the ladder, don't be shy. Jump right in there. You may not have much to offer, but after a while you will. And then those people, like me, a person who does that, I respect that. I'll grab them. I'll bring them in. I'll bring them into the circle. This guy looks like this woman wants to do something. This woman wants to grow. Get her in the circle. I don't really have any tolerance for folks who don't have good work ethic, that don't work hard, that don't, give a great effort. Again, even when you do all those things, there's no guarantee for success. But if you don't do those things, you're guaranteed not to be successful. That's what I see. That's 100% correct in my opinion. So that's what I say. Work hard, do what you're told, be prepared. But the biggest thing is get the right insulation of excellence around you, people that'll carry you forward and in a positive manner.
And what do you say, to, I'm curious, to the athletes, where eventually the window closes, right? And in many cases, so much of their identity is around being the athlete.
Oh, yeah.
As a coach, and you touched on this earlier with them being a, person as a whole, how do you help try and, I guess, maybe reduce the blind spots, right, that may be coming at some point? Or is that part of your coaching, right? You're coaching the person to sort of be mentally ready to be adaptive?
Our job doesn't really extend into that area often, because it's, it doesn't really show up on the field or in the weight room or, at practice. It doesn't show up like that. It ends up showing up in another way that they feel like they're entitled. If you see them, the way they treat the maid at the hotel or the waiter at the restaurant for dinner or lunch that day, that's when you maybe can help out a little bit. And it's a little bit touchy. I mean, it's less touchy now for me because I'm older. I mean, I think, again, stealing some lines from other folks, you don't want to wrap your identity up to the I don't know how to say it, to what you do. You should rather wrap your identity up to your intent. Because again, my intent is to work hard and make people better. Okay. Sometimes that doesn't happen, even when your intent is to work hard and make people better. But that doesn't make you a failure because you met your goal, your intention. Your intention was there. But if it's, my goal, my, external reward is a championship, and if not everybody wins a championship, so it's also unfair to yourself and to others to say, oh, that guy's no good, that girl's no good, they didn't win a championship. So now you and yourself are like, well, I failed, I didn't win a championship. Well, that's no way to do it either, right? I mean, but what was your intent this year? Well, our intention was to win it. And what was your mechanisms for that? Well, we worked hard, we trained hard, we have a good culture. Okay, then that's it. Then that's what you need to. Your internal measurement has to happen because the external is fleeting. It's too fleeting to time. Unfortunately, I and that sounds like you've seen that before, where a person, we see it all the time, where athletes just, when they're not, getting cheered on by thousands and getting free this and that and not having to wait in line and getting treated, with it's not really respect. It's just, as royalty, which really they're just athletes, right? Once that goes away, they have problems. I mean, like serious issues. So that's because they've wrapped their identity up to all the external stuff, and now it's gone. But your internal, what you think of you, right? Your effort's wrapped around your identity. It equals your effort, and your effort equals your identity. So it's got to be your intent. And I mean, when you have the chance to say something about it, I think you should, But I will say, Clay, that you don't really see that too much in the arena. That it's what you see outside of it, where you can tell that, folks are trying to, act as if what they do is more important than what they are.
Yeah, I'm curious, if money's no object, and you could do anything, where would you put your effort into today?
I think I would put it more into young people. Try to have a bigger influence. Like years ago, the NCAA college athletics was so much different than it is right now. I mean, it's light years different. It's completely different. And so I'm still connected to those athletes that I coached in the 80s, at UCLA and with some of the athletes, that was with the A's. Now that's a difference because you had adults on one end and kids on the other. But and I felt like because we're still in contact and the things that they still still the things that I'm appreciative that they did for me, affected their life somehow. And now that's not able to happen for a number of reasons. It's a long time ago. Number one, times change. But I think the place where you have the most impact now, and I tell coaches when they ask me, I'm on my way to a full-time job. Do I go to college? Do I go to high school? Do I go to the pros? And I tell them, go to high school. There's some great high school jobs out there right now. If you're looking to make the most money, you should just get out of strength and conditioning coaching, period, because it's not there. But if you want to have a fruitful career, then that's where you go, because now you're part of their life. You're teaching them, please and thank you. You're teaching them clean up your mess. You're teaching them, respectful actions and etiquette. And I think that's important. I've said it even recently because of the change of the climate. Somebody was asking me like, well, what's your philosophy, right now when in your college environment? I said, well, the first thing is please and thank you. I just don't see enough of that. And so that's important to me. It's important to me to have that kind of, and so they, these guys and women know what I expect. And that's how I'm going to do it, and at the same time, I have a conscience, right? I have a responsibility to my two sons, and my daughter's older, but to my two sons, I can't be somebody different coaching than I am as a parent, and hold myself to two different standards or two different ethics, right? And I just don't like right now what's happening in several areas, and so now I get to choose again, the virtue of not being retained, because I would have just kept riding it out and gritting my teeth, trying to get what I thought should have been done. Instead, I have now the opportunity to say, okay, well, let's take a look, let's widen out. I'm also looking at some jobs that the military are now beginning to hire strength and conditioning and performance. And now the military is looking differently at how they prepare the troops, all the enlisted men, instead of just, all the things that we've seen before, just, an unbelievable load of physical activity all day long. They realize now that's probably not the best. And so they're trying to get better there. So, that's something I'd be very interested in as well.
That's neat. And yeah, I know that, the Army's got the H2F program.
Right.
And then there are a couple others. What interests you about the military?
Well, it's just a different mindset, right? I think I was asked the other day, like, why would you want to do the military? And I just said, well, I think it's certainly a more nobler cause. Preparing troops to, defend our country is a little different than trying to win a national championship. So, I think nobody would deny me the statement that that's probably a more nobler and more important goal, right? So, that's it. That's the bottom line.
Have you had any exposure to the military or vets?
Tactical? No. I know, I've had interns that are now in the military that have gone there through the H2F programs. So I know what they're experiencing. They really like what they're doing. And, but other than that, no, I haven't.
I'm curious, what would you say some of your top highlights are over your career?
Well, I think my stint with the Oakland A's is for sure, because we started down at the bottom and built something really special. I think some of the work I've done with men's soccer and volleyball over the years has been a highlight for me. With a gold medal, the two Olympic teams, I'm the only strength coach in U.S. history that has been a member of the U.S. Olympic team. And so I'm proud of that, and I'm proud that we came back with a gold in our first first go around in Beijing. But I think, in addition to that, just the length of my career, I'm proud of that, and I don't know if there's a handful, and there may even be less than that are now in their 41st year. So I'm really proud and respectful of that, and of all the people that were part of allowing me to be able to make that claim. But I think overall, if you looked at it, there's been over the years, there's been a lot of great things that happened just, individually at schools and in certain teams that, most were small victories, right? Small victories and small moments that were great moments. So,
can you give me an example of one of those?
Well, we had one of them is, women's basketball team at UC Santa Barbara, who had not been to a championship in a couple of years. They were used to doing that and didn't do that. And I was asked to take that team, and I did. And that year we ended up winning the conference championship. And so, it's good to be selected. Hey, we think you can help us. And the coach backed it, and the kids were involved in it. It was really one of those things I told you about. There was no gaps, no leaks in the intention and focus. And sure enough, we ended up winning the championship. So it was good to be a part of that. Where does that stand in the scope of things? I mean, you're a mid-major school, and you end up getting an automatic bid as the conference champion to go to the tournament, and you end up getting beaten the first round. You're seeded 16 to get beaten the first round by the number one team by 30 points, 40 points. So, nobody remembers that, but I certainly remember that team and what we did there, right? And there's a lot of individual cases where you have a kid who hasn't. I had a female swimmer who hadn't swam in a couple of years because she had injuries, and we finally got her back into the pool. And I remember her telling me that I'm going to compete this weekend. I said, "Oh, that's great. I'll be there." And so, again, this was at Santa Barbara. Well, what I did was, when they announced the field, I went and stood in her lane and just stood right in front on the other side of the pool and watched her swim. She was a really good sprinter at some point, and just, hadn't done much in a while. And when she finished, I walked up to her and I said, "Congratulations." She looked at me and she said, "I didn't finish last." And it just warmed to me, like it does right now thinking about it. So those kind of things. There's hundreds of those, thousands of those daily interactions, that you look back and it hits you like, wow, that was really something.
Let me ask you, if you had to take 1,000 more of those little interactions, or you winning a national championship or a gold medal, what would you choose?
Well, that's actually not a very fair question, because the last part, medals and championships, that keeps you employed longer. Like, you can't go walking in with these little fun, wow, I had fun today, like, okay, good. But I think that you have to have some sort of passion. You have to have both of those, because if you don't have passion, you don't see the small victories. You never see them. You're only on the championship, and we lost the championship. We're going to start right away next week. You can start working hard for next year's championship. That to me is a little bit phony, honestly. That's a little more, it's the old, rah, rah, let's go, we lost, there's only first place, and if you're not finishing first, you're finishing last. Like, that's boring, and it's not, there's nothing romantic about that at all. So I wouldn't pick one or the other. on my career, I want it to be just the way it has been with both.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of The Story Behind the Glory. Stay up to date with OnThree for our latest episodes by following OnThree on social media at OnThree Stories.